that these people haven't done anything wrong, you disagree with that now. You acknowledge that violating the law, presenting false clearances at airports, fraud, illegal immigration, that those are in fact crimes. Mr. Chairman, congratulations to the nominees on your nominations. Thanks for being here. Ms. Kato, let me start with you if I could. Judge Kato, you were quoted in a 2002 LA Weekly article, and I've got it here, about an effort by federal law enforcement officials right after 9/11 to prosecute individuals who had fraudulently obtained security clearances at airports. The article says that at the time, 563 people had been arrested in this particular government prosecution effort. Many of them were illegal immigrants, and they've been charged with a number of crimes, including false presentation of a Social Security number, false use of Social Security cards, falsely claiming to be a U.S. citizen. You said in the article, this is why you appeared in it, something that I find peculiar, and I want to give you a chance to explain it. You say, these are people who haven't done anything wrong. And then you go on to say that they are people who, in the government's mind, are just throwaways. So we're in the midst of, it's no secret, we're in the midst of a very significant crime wave in this country, assaults, homicides, you name it. Unfortunately, we've seen it in my home state of Missouri. So I'm really concerned about crime. And I'm concerned about what this administration is and is not doing to combat crime. The answer is they're not doing really anything of any import. And obviously, I'm concerned about what you would do on the bench in this regard. So let me just ask you, do you still think that people who have committed crimes, like the 563 folks here, references this article, do you still think that that's doing nothing wrong? Help me understand what you meant by that.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. You're correct. I was involved in that case, I think over 20 years ago, when I was appointed to represent individuals when I was a deputy federal public defender. In that role, my role was to do what I did for all of my clients, which was to put aside any personal opinions I might have about what they were accused of, to zealously advocate on their behalf, and to ensure that their Sixth Amendment rights were fulfilled. And that was what I was doing. In terms of the case itself, I do want to point out that in the Central District of California, the number of cases involved in that operation was somewhere around 100, a little bit over 100, maybe 107. And as a result of the advocacy from the Public Defender's Office, as well as other community organizations, we were able to convince the U.S. Attorney's Office to offer misdemeanor dispositions for the majority of those cases, dismissals in some of the cases. And so while I'm in no way, minimizing the seriousness of it, I do believe that as a result of zealous advocacy, the U.S. Attorney's Office agreed that the charges that were originally brought as all felonies, that justice required that either be reduced or dismissed in some cases.
Yeah, what concerns me is the comment that these people haven't done anything wrong, where we're talking about 563 individuals who had fraudulently obtained security clearances right after the worst terrorist attack in this nation's history. Let me ask you something else. 18 U.S.C. 1325 makes it a crime to enter this country illegally, right? I think that's a matter of fact.
It does.
And it's a crime to cross the southern border if you don't go through a port of entry, correct?
Yes, Senator.
And it's a felony if you do it more than once, correct?
If you've been prosecuted previously.
So you said about hundreds of people who had entered the country illegally that they hadn't done anything wrong. Do you have any idea what percentage of your cases, if you're confirmed, would involve offenses like immigration and fraud?
I do not, Senator.
It's 38%. The U.S. Sentencing Commission, and I have the numbers here before me for the Central District, it's 38% of your criminal docket would be offenses like immigration and fraud. And I'm worried, frankly, given your statements and record on this issue, that something that's going to make up a huge portion of your docket is an issue on which you have said that you've expressed concern about whether these things are really crimes, whether they really should be prosecuted, and you just amply described your efforts to make sure that folks were not prosecuted. Is there anything you can say to convince us that you'd be able to do your job here in such a large portion of your docket in the midst of one of the worst crime waves in this country's history?
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Again, the statements and the advocacy that I engaged in were when I was serving in my role as a deputy federal public defender.
Have you changed your view since then? Is that what the implication?
My role has changed. For the past 7.5 years, I've served as a sitting United States magistrate judge, and my record demonstrates that I was able to put aside my advocacy role, and now my role is solely one where my duty of loyalty is to the law and the law alone.
So you would say about your previous comments that these people haven't done anything wrong, you disagree with that now. You acknowledge that violating the law, presenting false clearances at airports, fraud, illegal immigration, that those are in fact crimes.
Senator, number one, as former counsel to those individuals, it would be inappropriate for me to make the type of statement that you are requesting.
No, I'm requesting that you clarify your view, which you made to a newspaper. You didn't make it in court. You made it to a newspaper. And I'm asking you to clarify whether you think that these people haven't done anything wrong, and in particular, the crimes that they were accused of. Are those things crimes or not? Are they serious or not?
A routine Senate judicial confirmation hearing quickly turned into a tense exchange when Senator Josh Hawley confronted Judicial Nominee Judge Karen Kato over comments she made more than 2 decades ago regarding illegal immigrants arrested after the September 11 terrorist attacks. Hawley questioned whether those past statements reflected how she would handle immigration and fraud cases if confirmed to a federal judgeship. The hearing soon shifted into a debate over criminal law, judicial impartiality, and the role of a public defender. Here's what happened. Senator Hawley began by citing a 2002 newspaper interview involving Judge Kato's work as a federal public defender. The article discussed a post-9/11 federal operation that arrested more than 500 individuals accused of fraudulently obtaining airport security clearances. Many of those arrested were reportedly illegal immigrants facing charges involving false social security numbers, fraudulent documents, and falsely claiming U.S. citizenship. Hawley focused on one particular quote attributed to Kato, where she said the defendants hadn't done anything wrong. Pointing to today's concerns over crime and border security, Hawley asked whether she still believed those individuals had done nothing wrong despite the criminal charges they faced. Judge Kato responded that the comments came while she was serving as a deputy federal public defender over 20 years ago. She explained that her responsibility at the time was not to personally judge her clients but to ensure their constitutional rights were protected and to provide them with a vigorous legal defense. Kato also noted that many of the cases in California ultimately resulted in reduced misdemeanor charges or dismissals after negotiations with federal prosecutors. According to her, those outcomes reflected prosecutorial discretion after legal advocacy, not an attempt to excuse criminal conduct. If you're enjoying this breakdown of today's Senate hearings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest political coverage.
And you suggested to me now, you've said several times, well, that was in a past role, which suggests that you think that your views have changed. I'm just trying to understand where you're actually coming down on this.
Senator, as I've stated, those statements were made in the course of my advocacy work. I currently sit as a United States magistrate judge where I'm no longer an advocate. Those are very different roles, and I understand that, and I've performed my role as a sitting United States magistrate judge for the past 7.5 years.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. In Judge Kato, you were a member of you were a member of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, which describes itself as an advocate for an end to the death penalty. Do you agree with the Supreme Court's ruling that the death penalty is constitutional and always has been constitutional?
Senator Hawley, I'm aware and I'm bound by the Supreme Court decision wherein the death penalty has not been ruled unconstitutional.
So that's a yes.
I agree with the Supreme Court, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley, and thanks to the witnesses. The good news is there are no additional questions to be asked. The questions for the record will be due to the nominees by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 8th, and the record will stay open until that time to submit letters and similar materials. And with that, the hearing stands adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Hawley wasn't satisfied that he pointed out that illegally entering the United States is a federal crime and reminded the nominee that repeat illegal entry can become a felony under federal law. The senator then cited federal sentencing statistics showing that immigration and fraud offenses account for roughly 38% of the criminal docket in the Central District of California, the very court where Kato would serve if confirmed. Given that large percentage, Hawley questioned whether someone with her previous public statements could fairly preside over such cases. Kato answered that her professional role had fundamentally changed. For the past 7.5 years, she said, she has served as a United States magistrate judge, where her duty is no longer to advocate for defendants but to apply the law impartially. Hawley continued pressing for a direct answer, asking whether she now acknowledged that illegal immigration, identity fraud, and obtaining false airport security clearances are serious crimes. Rather than directly revisiting her decades-old newspaper quote, Kato repeatedly emphasized that those statements were made while acting as defense counsel and that her current judicial record demonstrates impartiality. Before yielding his time, Hawley raised one final issue that he asked about her membership in the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, an organization that opposes the death penalty, and whether she agreed with Supreme Court precedent holding that capital punishment is constitutional. Kato answered that she is bound by Supreme Court precedent and acknowledged that the court has not ruled the death penalty unconstitutional. The exchange highlighted one of the recurring themes of judicial confirmation hearings: whether an attorney's past advocacy should influence how senators evaluate their ability to serve as an impartial judge. For Senator Hawley, the focus remained on immigration enforcement and criminal accountability. For Judge Kato, the central argument was that the role of a public defender is fundamentally different from that of a federal judge, and that her years on the bench demonstrate her commitment to applying the law fairly. With no further questions from the committee, the hearing concluded, and the nomination moved forward for additional consideration. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do past statements made while serving as a defense attorney matter when evaluating a judicial nominee, or should only a judge's record on the bench be considered?